We often conceptualize psychological abuse as a closed loop: two people, a closed door, and an isolated private conflict. Advanced narcissistic abuse operates as a distributed, compromised network rather than a relationship between two individuals. This chart illustrates the battlefield paradox. A target seeks community healing, only to find those systems weaponized. Notice the massive spike here, the second wave of proxy abuse. This community-scale gaslighting invalidates reality, acting as the primary driver for complex PTSD. Restoring reality requires you to stop fighting individual people and start mapping the structural mechanics of the narcissistic proxy system. Clinical triangulation functions as a strict information control mechanism. This diagram shows a baseline, healthy system of communication. Direct two-way lines connect person A and person B, ensuring a shared objective reality. The narcissist alters this architecture by installing themselves as a mandatory router, severing the direct connection between external parties. The router intercepts and filters every message, passing on fabricated narratives to prevent targets from comparing notes. This builds an estrangement based entirely on conversations that never actually occurred. Triangulation isolates the target inside a closed, corrupted loop of information. To enforce this alternative reality, the abuser recruits proxies, often called flying monkeys, to execute their harassment. This flowchart maps the architecture of proxy abuse. A central abuser dispatches multiple proxy nodes toward the target, effectively decentralizing the conflict. Proxies join this system because the abuser offers an attenuated shared fantasy, casting the proxy as a savior, protector, or exclusive insider. This cross-section of a proxy node details the psychological hooks used to recruit enablers. Notice the outer codependency layer, where individuals with a desperate need to rescue are drawn to the narcissist's feigned vulnerability. The inner core layers show how generalized anxiety and dependent personality traits force the proxy to outsource their independent reality testing to the abuser's false confidence. This architecture allows the abuser to enforce their narrative through a decentralized network while maintaining complete plausible deniability. We must look inward to find the psychological collapse that forces the abuser to deploy this system. Because of broken object relations, the abuser never interacts with the real target. They interact with an internalized, perfect snapshot of that person. When the target asserts independence or deviates from that snapshot, the abuser's shared fantasy begins to fracture and warp. The target is psychologically transfigured into the persecutory object, an absolute internal enemy that generates overwhelming anxiety for the abuser. To survive this internal dissonance, the abuser must externalize the conflict. This externalization manifests as a calculated preemptive strike. This chevron diagram shows the abuser publicly accusing the target of the exact behaviors the abuser perpetrated. These projections force the traumatized target into a defensive posture. To an outside observer, the victim's natural reactions look like the very instability the abuser described. The sprawling external proxy war is a mechanical symptom of the abuser's internal psychological collapse. Long after the physical discard, the abuser maintains a surveillance and data collection cycle called narcissistic probing. Hoovering, stalking, and proxy surveillance serve as clinical intelligence gathering operations. The abuser gathers data by weaponizing mutual acquaintances and scanning social media footprints to monitor the target's movements. Probing aims to test the target's emotional state and force them into one of two acceptable roles. The target must either become an enthusiastically submissive partner, ready for a new shared fantasy, or an active, highly visible enemy. The abuser uses this intelligence to manipulate the target into resolving the abuser's internal dissonance. No middle ground is permitted. Severing the network requires identifying corrupted proxies in your immediate environment. Engaging with a proxy is like arguing with vapor. They strictly adhere to the abuser's fabricated narrative and lack the capacity for independent thought. Watch for out-of-character inquiries from mutual friends regarding your routine, relationships, or emotional state.
These inquiries function as active intelligence collection for the abuser's probing cycle, rather than genuine concern. Recognizing these individuals as infected extensions of the abuser's pathology is the first step in avoiding the defensive trap. Defeating the proxy network requires the application of strict system isolation protocols. Secure your privacy settings, reject ambiguous social requests, and enforce a strict information diet with all mutual contacts. Do not defend against or deny the smear campaign to the proxy network. The network is clinically corrupted and will use your defense as further evidence of instability. Use absolute indifference to defeat the abuser's binary goal. This permanently starves the probing cycle of the emotional data it requires. Reclaiming reality requires you to understand the system's mechanics, sever the mandatory router, and permanently drop all corrupted proxies to exit the network.